You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
ICE and CBP can't even work with local law enforcement. Local law enforcement can't even share DMV data with these people.
Multiple high-profile crimes committed by migrants. The Trump administration's promise, some say, may not be enough. Then, the Fed suing Walmart for allegedly deceiving employees. The banking app delivery drivers were forced to opt into or else, and later.
The only way you're going to stop this is the death penalty for drug dealers.
Mounting backlash tonight for Biden following a slew of death penalty commutations. What Republicans would have to do to reverse that move. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Ryan Smith. On this weekend edition, we look at the big headlines of the week and look ahead at what to expect. President-elect Donald Trump says he might allow TikTok to continue operating in the U.S. China-based parent company ByteDance must sell its stake in the app for what the U.S. calls national security reasons or face a nationwide ban next month on January 19th. Right now, it's not clear what Trump can exactly do. He takes office on January 20th, the day after the deadline.
We won by 36 points with young people. That never happens. A Republican loses by 36 or 40. So I'm going to have to start thinking about TikTok.
The U.S. Supreme Court is set to hear arguments challenging that law. TikTok and ByteDance officials argue that a ban would violate free speech laws. Developing now, about 1 million people will receive up to $1,400 soon. According to the IRS, it's issuing $2.4 billion to those eligible taxpayers who missed one or didn't receive the full amount of COVID stimulus payments. Now, if you're eligible, you just have to sit back and relax. The IRS will send the money directly to your bank account or send a check in the mail by the end of January. The federal government now suing Walmart, an online payment platform branch manager. The feds accuse them of deceiving more than 1 million delivery drivers when bank accounts were opened without their consent. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau says Walmart and branch forced those contracted delivery drivers to use expensive deposit accounts to access their paychecks. The complaint also lays out that drivers were told they would lose their jobs if they didn't use the account, costing those workers an estimated $10 million in so-called junk fees to have those wages transferred to other banks. Walmart and Branch Messenger both denying the claims. Walmart responding, accusing the agency of filing a rushed lawsuit full of errors without giving them a chance to present their case during the investigation. Trump's incoming border czar now says Americans should expect family detention centers in the new administration. Tom Homan telling the Washington Post he will reinstate that policy as part of mass deportation efforts. President Biden directed border officials to get rid of the centers along with other tactics critics called inhumane. Homan recently threatened an aggressive crackdown. Take a listen.
So I'll send a whole bunch of agents into your community, and we'll find the bad guy. And when we find the bad guy, he's probably going to be with others that aren't a priority apprehension. But guess what? They're getting arrested too. So you're going to get exactly what you don't want, more arrests in your communities. I don't want to do that. I'd much rather be safe for the agents to arrest the guy in the county jail, but they don't let us in.
In a separate CNN interview, Homan said 100,000 beds would be needed to stage illegal migrants for detention. The horrific killing of a sleeping woman on a New York City subway train has thrust the topic of migrant crime back into the spotlight. The suspect in this case, a Guatemalan national, now in custody, but his presence here in the U.S. is raising questions and more concerns about immigration. Here's national correspondent Christine Frizzell with more.
A horrific incident on a New York City subway train. A woman burned to death while she was sleeping. Police say the suspect, 33-year-old Sebastian Zapeta Khalil, then sat back and watched her die.
Someone who we believe carried out one of the most just depraved crimes one person could possibly commit against another human being. And it took the life of an innocent New Yorker.
He has now been charged with first-degree murder and arson, with questions about how the undocumented Guatemalan immigrant got back into the country after being deported in 2018. And a new round of criticism for New York City's sanctuary policies.
ICE and CBP can't even work with local law enforcement. Local law enforcement can't even share DMV data with these people. So Governor Hochul, shame on you.
2024 has been marked by multiple high-profile murders committed by migrants, a reality many believe helped Donald Trump secure his election victory. He and his supporters constantly brought up the names and stories of the victims and blamed the Biden-Harris administration policies for allowing suspects to enter the country in the first place. 22-year-old Laken Riley, a nursing student in Georgia, was killed in February while out for a run. Jose Ibarra, the undocumented Venezuelan migrant convicted of killing her, had been previously arrested for other crimes and then released. Rachel Morin, a Maryland mother of 5, was killed in 2023. The man accused in her death, Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez of El Salvador, was just arrested in June. Morin's mother appeared with Donald Trump on stage over the weekend.
He heard the cries of a mother, and he made a promise that he was going to protect us.
Donald Trump vowing that protection will come in the form of a mass deportation program, which critics worry will lead to profiling, including of American citizens, and the deportation of many non-criminals, which could negatively impact the economy. I'm Christine Frizzau for the National News Desk.
A federal judge now ruling parts of a controversial book law in Arkansas are unconstitutional. That law would have allowed people to request that books in question be removed, then placed in a child-free area. Supporters say the law would prevent children from seeing obscene material. Others, though, say libraries and booksellers would then stop carrying controversial books out of fear of prosecution. The state's attorney general now plans to appeal that ruling. Opponents of abortion now focusing on restricting access to pills, which are the most common way to end pregnancy in the United States. Earlier this month, the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, filed a lawsuit against a doctor in New York State, claiming she violated a Texas state law by prescribing abortion pills via telehealth. Anti-abortion advocates are taking other steps, too, through legislation and lawsuits. Supporters of abortion rights are also concerned that Trump's new administration could take action to further restrict that access. During his final weeks in office, President Joe Biden now exercising some of his more controversial executive authorities. Just earlier this week, commuting the death sentences of nearly all federal inmates. As national correspondent Atra El-Nashar reports, it may not have the lasting impact he intended.
Since President Biden announced he's commuted the death sentences of 37 federal inmates to life in prison without the possibility of parole, we've seen mixed reaction from loved ones of their victims. Corey Groves, whose mother, Kim Groves, was murdered in 1994 after a New Orleans police officer ordered a hit on her, said, "I have always wanted him to spend the rest of his life in prison and have to wake up every morning and think about what he did when he took our mother from us." It's different for Heather Turner, the daughter of Donna Major, a bank teller killed by an armed robber in 2017.
The feelings were just gut-wrenching.
Unequivocal condemnation coming from the man who's about to take Biden's job. In a lengthy Christmas Day Truth Social post, President-elect Trump wrote in part, "To the 37 most violent criminals who killed, raped, and plundered like virtually no one before them, but were just given, incredibly, a pardon by sleepy Joe Biden, I refuse to wish a Merry Christmas to those lucky souls, but instead will say, go to hell." When Biden took office, he imposed a moratorium on federal executions, and when he announced these commutations, said, "In good conscience, I cannot stand back and let a new administration resume executions that I halted." But Trump has other ideas, ones to expand the federal use of the death penalty. Here's some of what he said on the campaign trail.
And I will urge Congress to ensure that anyone caught trafficking children across our border receives the death penalty immediately, and that includes also for women.
The only way you're going to stop this is the death penalty for drug dealers.
And I am hereby calling for the death penalty for any migrant that kills an American citizen or a law enforcement officer.
Federal law already allows for the death penalty in cases of first-degree murder and murder of law enforcement officials. Ultimately, only Congress can pass laws expanding the federal use of the death penalty. Republicans will have control of both the House and Senate when Trump takes office. But their majorities won't be large enough to get major legislation like this to Trump's desk for a signature without agreement from Democrats. I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
The U.S. saw more than 1,900 food recalls just this year, from chips to deli meat, onions, milk, even ice cream. The fact-check team's Janae Bowen's joining me now. She has been sifting through all the most recent data on this. So, Janae, how does the number of recalls issued to those consumers this year compared to years past.
Yeah, Ryan, we haven't seen this many recalls since 2019 when there were 2,046. Now, in the fiscal year 2024, we had 1,908 food and cosmetic recalls.
So that begs the obvious question here, what is behind this increase?
Yeah, so experts told Axios that the rise is partially because of an increase in consumer demand for ready-to-eat foods and prepackaged meals. Now, those products usually don't require additional cooking, which means there's no method to potentially kill listeria. They also report with the globalization of food production, there are more scenarios for blind spots and more opportunities for contamination at multiple points in the supply chain. There have also been critical failures in sanitation inspections from the federal government. This year's boar's head outbreak is an example of that. And Ryan, the fiscal year 2025, which started in October, has already seen over 300 food recalls.
Important context there, Janae. Thank you so much. She will be back in just a few minutes to break down how many people have died from foodborne diseases each year. Up next here on the National News Desk, schools now leaning into AI in the classroom, why experts warn the time to talk about the tech shift should happen now. Plus, blindsided by medical bills months after doctors' visits, patients receive a slew of unexpected charges. Where the fees are coming from, now patients can fight back. Artificial intelligence and chatbots are becoming more and more common in the tech world. Companies continuing to explore and expand those capabilities. Now, earlier this week, I spoke with Marley Strawn, co-founder of Scholar Education, all to discuss how access to AI in classrooms could soon impact the way children are learning in schools across the country. Marley, thank you so much for joining us tonight. First up, chatbots like the popular program ChatGPT, they are starting to be introduced in some American schools. How is AI being used in the classroom, and what results specifically are you seeing right now?
Yeah, AI in education is really focusing on enhancing teaching and learning by just automating as many repetitive tasks and time-consuming tasks that we can. So on the teacher side, we're seeing a lot of things like helping with lesson planning and data analytics. And on the student side, we're able now to provide personalized real-time feedback to students. I think it's important to note that we're really early days in AI adoption in general. So the results are limited, but what we're seeing at Scholar Education is that teachers are reporting saving 3 to 5 hours per week on lesson planning and grading. And we are also seeing that our students feel like they're getting one-on-one support tailored to their needs, which is really boosting their engagement and their confidence in their classroom.
Marley, certainly a lot of positives to using AI in the classrooms that you just noted there, but we did recently just learn of a 14-year-old who tragically took his own life after falling in love with a chatbot, that according to a recently filed lawsuit. Now, in your opinion, can AI be blamed fully or at least even in some part for this teen's death? And is this technology more dangerous than we or some parents realize?
Yeah, I think it's an important conversation. And this tragic example is, I think at its core, what any technology can have an impact on, if not implemented in a way that we teach students and teachers the safe way to use these tools. AI is a tool, and the reality is students if they don't understand how the technology works, there are risks, and that is, this example is a tragic example of that. So my push is that we really focus on AI literacy. We focus on making sure that we're providing AI in an ethical and safe way. And we can do that if we consider the tools that we're using and make sure that there's guardrails in place and that we're educating students on how this technology works, what the potential risks are, and the best use cases for the technology.
And finally, Marley, with about the last 30 seconds or so we have with you here, as AI programs are now becoming more integrated into not only the classroom but our daily lives, how can those parents really best protect their children and ensure success in the classroom?
Yeah, open dialogue with your students, promote critical thinking, ask your students to always question and verify the information that they're using, and really just setting boundaries around screen time and just talking to your student and making sure that you're informed about the tools that they're using as well.
Marley, thank you so much for that insight tonight. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
A growing number of patients now getting hit with surprise bills from their doctor's offices for unexplained charges and things that used to come free for patients. Spotlight on America correspondent Angie Moreski investigating tonight why patients are getting nickeled and dimed.
Cherie Vasquez loves to garden, but hurt her neck and ended up going to a pain clinic in Huntsville, Alabama for help, where she got numbing injections.
It was the doctor's office. I paid my copay, which was $60.
She had 2 visits, 7 injections, and thought that was it.
$979 charge.
But this September, a year later, she was blindsided by additional bills totaling $1,900 on top of her copays and nearly $4,000 her insurance paid.
And they're outpatient services.
The surprise charges came from the hospital that owns the doctor's office, even though she never went to the hospital.
What was your reaction when you saw those charges?
To be honest, I felt anger. They didn't tell me that they were going to bill me separately. They did. If I would have known this, I would have never gotten those injections.
Unexpected fees from doctor's office visits are becoming more common, even for things that used to be free and included in the service, like using your patient portal, room disinfection fees, the doctor answering emails, and writing prescriptions and referrals.
This is another medical bill from a patient in Virginia who also contacted Spotlight. She didn't want to go on camera, but told us she got some slightly bad news at an office visit and cried, then was stunned to see this $20 charge for a brief emotional behavioral assessment on her bill.
We have a system that is dysfunctional and broken.
Cynthia Fisher is founder of PatientRightsAdvocate.org, a nonprofit that fights for medical billing transparency.
It's all about maximizing profits.
She blames charges like these on changes in the healthcare industry away from private practice. 80% of doctors today are employed by corporate entities.
The doctors being owned by the insurance companies primarily and the hospitals and private equity now is its big business.
Spotlight contacted the American Medical Association to get insight on why doctors are charging these fees. A spokesperson told us some services, like answering emails, can be a significant time drain for doctors, justifying additional fees. He also said Medicare reimbursements to physicians have declined by nearly 30% over the past 2 decades and called the Medicare payment system broken. Spotlight also called Huntsville Hospital.
Yes, hello.
Which owns the doctor's office where Cherie went.
Why would she get a bill from the hospital?
The accounting department told us it could be a facility fee or equipment fee. The hospital declined an interview, but sent Spotlight a statement saying the billing practice is the same for every patient and is communicated with the patient up front before the service, although Cherie disputes that.
I decided to fight back. I don't want to pay for something that I don't believe is right and is fair.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Angie Moreski.
Just ahead, home for the holidays, how a Tennessee family displaced by Hurricane Helene got a new house just in time for Christmas. Plus, an unexpected but welcome reunion to show you how a man discovered his long-lost siblings 75 years after being adopted. The National News Desk's team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America. We start in Cincinnati, Ohio, where one restaurant owner worked overtime this Christmas to serve up some holiday joy.
Most restaurants close their doors on Christmas Day, but Christine's in Green Township welcomes everyone for the holiday.
It makes me feel good that the family comes here and spend their Christmas and eat here and have a great time here.
We saw that it was open on Christmas, and we've already had our family parties.
This is Sarah Murphy's first time at Christine's, along with her husband and some friends.
A lot of it is people like us that are older, our kids are grown, and then I don't have to cook, and it's it makes the day a lot more enjoyable.
Dixon Hanshaw has celebrated plenty of holidays, but he tells me this Christmas is one he'll never forget.
This is my Christmas miracle.
Ours
That's
too.
what I call it, my Christmas miracle.
He was born in Buffalo, adopted, and grew up in Elmira as an only child.
All my life, I dreamed about having siblings somewhere.
In mid-August, Dixon ordered his pre-adoption certificate, not knowing he had a whole family he was about to discover.
It wasn't difficult. My biggest hesitancy was I didn't want to intrude on people. I didn't know whether they would be happy that I was around or not. And thanks to Gary over there, he was the first one I called.
I was eating my lunch in my car at a job site, and I got a phone call, and I didn't recognize the number. And I hardly ever answer the phone if I don't recognize the number. But for some reason, I answered it. And he says, "Hi, my name's Dixon. Are you Gary Romig?" I said, "I am." And he goes, "I'm your brother." And I'm like, "What?"
Both men kind of in shock, Dixon sent Gary a photo of himself. Gary shared it with his 5 other siblings, and they immediately recognized their father's face.
It's so special because he's very emotional and excited, and can't believe that we are opening our arms to him and welcoming him in the family.
The siblings all thankful to be spending this holiday together as a family.
Nearly 3 months ago, the Moon family lost their previous home in Chuckey due to Helene.
Our home was gone, but it moved like 39 inches from the foundation.
After months of house hunting, they finally found something for their family of 6, just in time for the holidays.
A blessing to come home and see presents under your own tree instead of someone else's.
Nonprofit organization River of Life Miracles helping Stephanie and Edward Moon throughout their entire flood recovery journey.
We have been in touch with them pretty much since the very beginning. We felt like it was important to not just give them supplies and then be on our way, but to really walk throughout the new year with them, especially through Christmas.
Next, the peak of winter ushering in freezing temperatures for millions. The red flags to watch out for if you're using propane or coal to heat your home. An important health alert to tell you about. The USDA now recalling roughly 10,000 pounds of bologna and sausage, 7,500 pounds of raw pork sausage from Baltimore-based Impero Foods and Meats, now pulled from store shelves because it was processed without passing inspection. Also, more than 3,000 pounds of ready-to-eat pork and bologna from Ralph's Packing Company. That's because it may contain milk without the proper label, which of course could pose a serious health risk for anyone with a milk allergy. With colder weather now in the forecast, experts warn unconventional ways of heating your home can lead to carbon monoxide poisoning. Doctors say indoor use of propane or coal heaters must be used with proper ventilation and, of course, safety. Signs of poisoning include dizziness and nausea or flu-like symptoms without a fever. If multiple people come down with the same symptoms inside the same home, it could point to monoxide poisoning. Now, you should immediately find fresh air and call 911. In our next half hour, leadership in limbo, why Congress's funding fight could spell trouble for House Speaker Mike Johnson. And later, President-elect Donald Trump's warning for Hamas. How many Americans are still held captive in Gaza? Their family's message for those watching from home. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. You can catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m., then at night from 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Big tech breaking into Trump's inner circle, what the shift could mean for the outlook of apps like TikTok, plus the future of work, the employment challenges experts are predicting will take off in the new year. Then later, the top stories from 2024, look back at the news that gripped the nation and the world this year. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Ryan Smith. This weekend, we're looking ahead at the possible leadership shakeup on Capitol Hill. Democrats say House Speaker Mike Johnson should not count on them for another bailout as he faces a slim majority in the upcoming session. His Republican conference is growing impatient with his record as Speaker, especially after a botched CR plan that nearly led to a government shutdown. House Republicans say leadership has to find a way of working together.
I think it's very, very important that Speaker Johnson and incoming Majority Leader Thune have a steady plan together to work with the incoming Trump administration to prioritize the president's priorities, our priorities in the House and Senate, make sure we're on the same page, because with narrow majorities, we've got to work together.
Johnson still has to survive a Speaker election, and some in his party now signaling they may not support his bid. The man accused of trying to assassinate President-elect Donald Trump at his Florida golf course won't be back in court until next September. Ryan Roost's trial was initially scheduled for February 10th. His attorneys now requesting that the trial be delayed for more time to review the evidence against him and decide on whether to include an insanity plea. The judge in this case now saying that any insanity defense must be made clear in the next few weeks. The U.S. banking lobby now suing the Federal Reserve over the central bank stress testing framework. That announcement comes after the Fed announced plans for significant changes to its annual testing, all in an effort to make the process more transparent and stable. After the Great Recession, lawmakers passed a law requiring that banks undergo stress testing and to set aside capital in the event of another banking crisis. The banks say they want more direct input on future models. Despite low unemployment, a Gallup report points to new challenges facing workplaces in the new year. In 2024, U.S. employee engagement reached an 11-year low, and overall employee satisfaction spiraled to an all-time low. That report finding more people are looking for new jobs, but quit rates have not increased. It's a trend Gallup has referred to as the Great Detachment. Gallup says re-engaging the workforce and rebuilding employee commitment will be challenges for bosses and leaders in the new year. Donald Trump has made big promises to crack down on big tech in his second term, filling his staff with people who hope to do the same. But in recent weeks, he's been building strong relationships with tech giants, including some he's long criticized for years. National correspondent Atra Elnishaw reports tonight on what this could mean for the apps we use every day.
Big tech billionaires trying to break into President-elect Trump's inner circle. His inaugural fund getting million-dollar donations from Mark Zuckerberg's Meta, Jeff Bezos' Amazon, and OpenAI CEO Sam Altman. X's Elon Musk calls himself the first buddy.
I want to get ideas from them. Look, we want them to do well.
Tech companies, especially social media platforms, know they have a lot to lose. In addition to an incoming president who's accused them of censoring conservative speech, gripes with social media companies, from privacy to child safety, are some of the few things Democrats and Republicans in Congress can agree on. Scrutiny of their industry is about to get more intense. Take Trump's pick to lead the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr.
For too long, Republicans just sat by and said, look, if a large corporation wants to do something, who are we to stand in the way? And Democrats said, well, they're ideologically aligned with us, so we'll let them get away with it. I think that era is over.
Carr wrote an entire chapter in Project 2025 about how the FCC should be run, which includes making it easier to sue social media companies over how they moderate content. Platforms say that would force them to either moderate nothing or everything, drastically changing the landscape of the internet. Then there's the issue of TikTok. The company's last hope for dodging a ban in the U.S. could come from the Supreme Court. Or Trump may try to throw it a lifeline once he's in office.
I have a warm spot in my heart for TikTok.
Other companies on notice are Google and Apple. Gail Slater has been nominated to lead the Department of Justice's Antitrust Division and will pick up ongoing cases against the companies seeking to end what the DOJ says are anti-competitive practices. When he nominated Slater, Trump said, "Big tech has run wild for years, stifling competition in our most innovative sector." Time will tell if Trump follows through on plans to crack down on big tech, as its top executives try to convince him he has more to gain by working with them. In Washington, I'm Atra Elnishaw for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
This year, the U.S. has seen the most consumer recalls since before the pandemic. Unfortunately, many people have gotten sick. Some have even died from contaminated products. Janae Bones with our fact-check team. She is back here. So, Janae, how many people have gotten sick specifically from these food-borne illnesses each year?
Yeah, Ryan. So the CDC estimates 48 million people get sick from food-borne illnesses each year. 128,000 are hospitalized and 3,000 die.
And did you find any data here to back up the numbers on how many illnesses or even deaths were connected to those food recalls?
Yeah, so the CDC reports 104 people were infected with E. coli because of slivered onions on McDonald's Quarter Pounder hamburgers. Now, they have a record of 34 hospitalizations. 4 people developed a serious condition that can cause kidney failure. 1 person died. The CDC confirmed earlier this month that the case is closed and there were no new illnesses associated with eating at McDonald's. Now, deli meat, including the Boar's Head brand, was a source of listeria this year. According to the CDC, 60 people were hospitalized and 10 deaths were reported. Last month, the CDC declared the outbreak was over.
Janae, thank you. Of course, yeah, those were 2 major health concerns that popped up just in recent months, so thank you for that. For more information on this fact-check team topic, including links to their sources, scan the QR code on your screen or go online. Visit thenationaldesk.com. We're now getting a clearer picture of the war in Gaza's devastating impact on children. 1 child is killed in Gaza every hour. That, according to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. The group said more than 14,000 children have been killed since the war started in October of last year. According to Gaza's health ministry, more than 45,000 Palestinians have been killed since the war began. Israel, though, points to Hamas for using schools and other public spaces as cover for its operations. The UN adds 1,200 Israelis have been killed as well. This holiday season, we're taking time to remember a group of families who simply cannot gather together. Those with loved ones who were killed in Gaza or are still being held hostage by Hamas. Our Angelo Brown sitting down with Virginia Allen, who has spoken with survivors and family members of those still in captivity.
You know, it's been over a year since the October 7th Hamas terror attack on Israel. And at this point, I believe that we have around 7 more American hostages still being held. And just going through seeing their faces and reading their stories, we have people of different ages, young, older, but all of them have relatives right here, some of them relatives right here in American soil. And you've had a chance to speak to so many of them. What are they telling you about their relatives being held hostage over in Gaza.
Yeah, you know, it is really the definition of heartbreak. You have families that have waited for 14 months to see their loved ones again, either to bury the body of their loved one who's still being held hostage or to be reunited. And so it does feel so appropriate today on Christmas Day. Hanukkah begins tonight at sundown. It's so appropriate to take time to remember the fact that these folks are still in captivity. As for those of the Christian faith, as we celebrate the birth of Christ, fully God and fully a Jewish man, to know that there are still about 50 Israelis who are hostage in Gaza. 3 of those are Americans who are still believed to be alive. Idan Alexander is 20 years old. He was serving in the Israeli military on October 7th when he was taken. Keith Segal is 65 years old. He was shot. His ribs were broken on October 7th when he was driven in his own vehicle back into Gaza. And then Sagi Del Chen, he's 36 years old. He's the father of 3 little girls, one of whom he's never met because she was born 2 months after he was taken hostage. And so what a privilege it's been for me to get to speak with these families. And those are the ones who are alive. And then there's 4 bodies of Americans who are being held hostage in Gaza. And, you know, the request of us, as I've talked to some of these families, is please pray for us. Please pray for the release of our loved ones. Please pray for the release of their bodies so that we can bury them properly and have that closure.
You know, thank you for sharing that, what they told you, what you've learned. But also, you talk about Keith Segal, one of the men being held hostage. His wife, also a hostage for, I think, around 51 days. You had a chance to speak with her. There was a video, I believe, of Keith that was released. Was it earlier this year? And I remember, I think she said something like, and there we have some video right there of you two together, that he looked terrible. Does she have any new word of how he's doing at all?
So for information that she can share, she's not able to share, you know, if they know where he is, obviously for security reasons, they don't want to divulge that information. But she told me that when she left him, so she was hostage with him for 51 days, and she had, in that time that she was hostage, she lost about 20 pounds. She had an infection when she was released, and Keith was increasingly getting weaker and weaker and weaker. But she said, you know, when I found out that I was being released, but Keith wasn't, I said to him, you stay strong for me and I'll stay strong for you. And she says, those are the words that kept me going. And she believes that those are the words that are keeping him going and keeping him fighting for life in the tunnels of Gaza. She believes he's still down in those tunnels. That's where she was kept with her husband and some other female hostages as well.
So what do they think? You know, President-elect Donald Trump has threatened, quote, hell to pay in the Middle East if the hostages are not returned to America by January 20th, which is Inauguration Day. What do some of these hostages, I mean, what is their take on this? How are they reacting to these strong words?
I spoke with Iris Weinstein Haggai. She is the daughter of 2 Americans, Judy Weinstein Haggai and Gad Haggai. They both were killed on October 7th, but their bodies were taken back to Gaza and are still being held there, in her words, as bargaining chips. And I asked her, what did you make of Trump's comments that there would be hell to pay? And she said, we have waited for so long for a world leader to make that statement. She really couldn't put into words how much this statement has meant to her, to the Jewish people, to the Israeli people, to have someone this strong. And she said, you know, if every world leader on October 8th, 2023 had made that statement, a lot of lives would have been saved. Not only lives of the hostages, but also Palestinian lives. So much conflict and tension could have been avoided if right away world leaders said, we demand these hostages be released or else. And unfortunately, that's not what has happened. So Iris told me, I have a lot of hope that these hostages that remain, both those who are alive and those who have passed, will be released under the leadership of President-elect Donald Trump.
You can view that full interview, plus more top stories online all the time at thenationalnewsdesk.com. Stay with us. We're back in 90 seconds. As we say goodbye to 2024, Americans are feeling more hopeful in the new year. That's according to a new YouGov poll. 57% of respondents report saying they're feeling hopeful for 2025. That's up from last year's count of 47%. About the same number of people reported feeling discouraged at 23%, while the number with mixed emotions dropped 11%. Among those who say they're generally hopeful about 2025, their primary reason, they say, is that Donald Trump will be returning to the White House. From catastrophic storms to major space milestones and mishaps, this last year has packed in a lot of historic moments. As we close out 2024, Lee Waldman looks back at the most memorable stories across the world.
We took off in 2024, looking to the skies, but hit unexpected turbulence quickly when cell phone video showed the harrowing moments after a door plug blew out midair on an Alaskan Airlines flight.
There was no one seated there.
It was the first of several safety issues for Boeing's 737 MAX that prompted the National Transportation Safety Board to launch an investigation and issue urgent safety recommendations. Big courtroom drama captured the attention of people across the globe.
Mr. President!
Former President Donald Trump was ordered to pay nearly $500 million in two unrelated civil trials before his New York criminal trial kicked off, and was later found guilty of 34 felony charges for falsifying business records.
The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people.
Hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs was arrested in Manhattan on charges of sex trafficking and other federal charges. He has pleaded not guilty.
We're praying for all the victims of the Key Bridge collapse.
Tragedy on the water in the early morning hours of March 26, when a 213 million pound cargo ship hit a support pillar for Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge. 6 construction workers were killed in the collapse. Celebration turned to terror when shots rang out at a Super Bowl parade in Kansas City.
Good morning, you may be seated.
In Michigan, Jennifer and James Crumbly were sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison, marking the first time ever that the parents of a school shooter were legally held accountable for their child's actions. A days-long manhunt captured the attention of the nation after the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson, was shot and killed in Midtown Manhattan in early December. The alleged gunman, 26-year-old Luigi Mangione, was later captured in Pennsylvania at a McDonald's. He pleaded not guilty to the 11 New York State charges, including murder in the first and second degrees. Helene made landfall in Florida as a Category 4 hurricane before cutting north through the Carolinas, causing devastating flooding throughout western North Carolina. At least 232 people died in 6 states. Less than 2 weeks later, Hurricane Milton slammed into western Florida as a Category 3 storm. 2 major deadly storms, millions of people impacted, billions of dollars worth of damage left behind. October 7th marked 1 year since the deadly terror attack by Hamas, where nearly 1,200 people in Israel were killed and hundreds were taken hostage. In the year since, over 44,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza by Israel, and nearly all of the 2.2 million people living there have been displaced. Protests sprung up at college campuses across the country in response to the ongoing humanitarian crisis. In Syria, Bashar al-Assad's regime fell as a rebel coalition swept into Damascus, taking control of the capital and forcing the longtime dictator to flee the country. As the war in Ukraine raged and U.S. relations with Russia continued to deteriorate, one bright spot was the return of 3 American citizens as a part of an elaborate multinational prison swap. The election rematch between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump dominated much of 2024 until an unexpected moment following CNN's presidential debate.
With the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with.
Biden dropped out. Vice President Kamala Harris moved up to the top of the ticket. During the campaign, former President Trump survived not 1, but 2 attempts on his life. Come November, the American people made their voices heard and re-elected Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States. Third time's a charm for Boeing to successfully launch its Starliner capsule with astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams on board. Their stay on the International Space Station was extended when NASA was forced to bring the spacecraft back to Earth without them due to a technical issue. 2024 was a year of unexpected stars, though no star shined brighter than the GOAT herself and the rest of the Golden Girls on the Olympic stage. I'm Lee Waldman reporting.
Next, we highlight stories of generosity as this year comes to a close, from a restaurant serving up free meals to a program helping pets find their forever home at an animal shelter in Texas. Stay with us. We're back in 90 seconds. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters stationed across the country covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America tonight. We started a Texas animal shelter and its efforts during the holidays to help animals in need find their forever homes.
We're excited, and I think he's excited, hopefully.
Drew and Sydney Willoughby are ready for a pet.
We'll be comforting him, and hopefully he kind of does the same to us.
But they aren't sure it's the right time, which is why after little Henrik caught their eye,
Taking Henrik on a sleepover?
they're taking the pup home for a couple of weeks in a trial period Austin Pets Alive calls a sleepover, just in time for the holidays.
I'm excited to have a new little buddy for Christmas.
He gets to open some presents, make his Christmas a little better.
APA Communications Director Luis Sanchez says for the holidays, they've already adopted out about 30 dogs and 50 cats.
It's great to see families here, full families with the kids, making that decision together.
They say when it comes to a new pet, it's important to give the animal plenty of space and love.
Give the animals the patience they need because they're not going to transition within a day.
They say there's no such thing as a free lunch, but amid laughter,
Yes, we can do that.
and Christmas music, that's exactly what was waiting for diners at Taquitos Feliz on Tuesday.
Food is delicious. It is absolutely marvelous.
This was Taquitos Feliz's way of celebrating 1 year open. Cesar Sanchez Guzman says he did the same thing last year. One thing heard over and over again was yum, the other, thank you.
I'm happy that people are doing good things for this world. This is such a blessing. This is truly a blessing.
But why give away free food? Sanchez Guzman says there's always a need amid pressure to buy Christmas gifts and other expenses. He wants food to be the last thing on his diners' minds.
We got the best volunteers in the world. A lot of hours going here, a lot of untold stories, and a lot of heroes walk out of this place.
They've been hard at work, loading up toys, coats, bikes, and anything a family in need long before the holiday season, working year-round. And according to Forgotten Child Fund President Kelly Simmons, while it's hard work, he knows it's worth it.
We see people struggle and parents, and it ain't the kids' fault.
Simmons isn't alone, as he teams up year in and year out with law enforcement and emergency services.
Public safety is a calling, and there's no limit to the giving.
For 20 years, Simmons says he's been fighting to help those in need. And in those 20 years, the feeling of helping someone has never gotten old.
But really get out that truck and put a smile on a kid's face, and you wouldn't believe how many people that come back to us and say, this has been a life-changing event for my whole entire family.
Major recall just announced impacting tens of thousands of Jeeps. Next, the glitch that could disrupt your visibility, increasing the risk of a crash. Major recall just issued tonight, impacting nearly 80,000 Jeep vehicles due to an issue with its rear view camera. The software glitch blocks the display of the backup camera, which of course could increase the chance of a crash. The recall impacts certain 2024 models, including the Grand Cherokee L, the Wagoneer, and Grand Wagoneer. Owners will receive a letter in the mail by the end of next month. Dealers will repair that software issue for free. Like a scene from Grand Theft Auto, a stolen car crashed inside of a school's swimming pool. Check this out here. Staff members at a Tucson, Arizona high school finding the car upside down in the campus pool. Thankfully, no one was inside. No injuries to report, though. The car has been removed, and since then, the school district installed new fencing to secure the area. Police out there still on the hunt for the driver. That's all for the weekend edition of the National News Desk. Don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. And we're always online. Find the latest headlines at thenationalnewsdesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition of the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Ryan Smith. Have a great week.